And welcome to Our Time. As we age and the kids have left home, many couples decide to downsize. Well, some become grey nomads and some move to smaller accommodation. What do we need to know, and what exactly are retirement villages and what do they offer? Well, Martin Banham is the director of Pandora Lifestyle Villages, so let's find out more. Welcome, Martin.
Thanks, Malcolm. Good to be here.
Now, what's interesting, people keep saying to me, well, at your age, you should be thinking about downsizing. And I keep thinking, why? Because I don't have children, they didn't leave home, and I'm quite happy where I am. But a lot of people had a big house with lots of bedrooms because they had 2 or 3 kids, and they're thinking now, I'm sick of mowing the lawn or doing the garden. What are my options? And what really are the options for people who are maybe selling their house and looking to move into some sort of village, as a retirement village or whatever else is offering? And I know that there are a whole lot of different, what would you call them, platforms you can go to do that. So you're the expert. Where do we start?
Well, I'm not sure that I'm an expert, but I know a bit about the different fields that we operate in. And I guess I've been doing it for over 30 years, so I've definitely heard all of the stories and the fears and concerns of people. The option that we run is a land lease model. So in that model, people own their own home and they just lease the site. And that gives them access to all sorts of communal facilities to have as social a life as they are interested in, or if they don't wish to and just wish to have a more private life and not join in too much, they can do that as well. So it's
almost like going back to the old communities and the old towns in Europe, isn't it, where everybody lived sort of close together, but you still had the privacy to stay apart.
Yes, very much so. In the early days of our villages, we mostly had British people. So we were like over 80% British, but now in recent decades there's been a lot more Australians come in who've learned to appreciate this style of living.
Is that because in Britain most people are living in closer 2 up, 2 down, or in apartment or flats, as they call them there?
Yeah, and they knew the neighbourhood, they knew the people in the street, there was a common area that was shared. Whereas Australians have traditionally, not so much now, of course, had the 1/4 acre block with a big backyard and a nice high fence that they could raise their family in. And that's all very well when you've got a family, but it's not so good when you're looking after that amount of land and probably the house needs renovating and there's repairs and you don't know anyone in the street.
Yes, well, after living, say, in a house for 30 to 40 years, every house needs a lot of maintenance.
It does. Yeah.
So what happens? So I've decided I'm going to do this. So what I understand is I'm not buying the land, I'm just buying the property on the land.
Yes.
I'm going to be living in fairly close proximity with other people. If I want to join in with events or social activities, they're there. There's facilities that if I got sick, at least there's somebody close by that could perhaps help me. Is that the main motivation for people, do you think?
It is. There's the increased social life is one, the economic savings.
Because you don't have the kids anymore to talk to because they've gone.
That's right. And like humans are social beings. We all need social interaction of one sort or another. So like for you, people saying to you, well, you should think about one of these places. Well, maybe you don't need to. Yeah, because you've got a wide social network by the sounds of it. And we all need that, but it can be a little bit like a creeping frog syndrome as well, where some people in their lives, when the kids leave home or the neighbourhood changes, that they're not as quick to re-establish new relationships and new friendships, and over time they can feel quite lonely and isolated. And the networks that they had around them just aren't what they were, and then they need to look at somewhere.
Well, it's interesting. I was watching the news the other night about some issues with people living alone and, bad things happening to them, either, being broken into or house on fire or whatever. And interesting listening to the comments of neighbours saying, he was a nice man or she was a nice woman. We occasionally saw her in the garden and waved. And you think, yes, but we never saw anybody ever visit. We never saw anybody come and say hello.
That's right.
It can be a lonely life, particularly in our society where we're sort of encouraged to retire, particularly now that people have got super, and they think, right, I'm 65 or 63, I'm going to give up for good. Now what do I do? Do I play lawn bowls? What do I move into?
Well, that's right. The other damning thing, I think, in that story you just told about people, when we hear these horrific stories of what's happened to some in tragic circumstance, is the neighbours make those comments, but what they're not saying is, I used to have a cup of tea with him or her. You know, I had a regular social interaction.
Yes.
And that's where the loneliness actually comes from. It's not enough just to say hello, and it doesn't nurture the, you know, the human soul kind of thing, you know, with just that sort of interaction. People need something much more engaging. And you know, that's what's possible in a village. And
so in most of the villages, is there like a social organiser of things that go on there, so that like a newsletter, or is it an email? What happens so you know what's happening?
Yeah, whether it's retirement village or residential village, you'll generally find you've either got, in some cases, the village manager will organise events.
Right.
In the villages that we operate, we have a social club, which is fully incorporated, and they organise their own events. And we help them out with quite a bit, because of course we provide the facilities. But when they you know, need a bit of extra assistance, we're there to step in and do that. And they have very extensive platforms of social events.
So Martin, is there an issue with kids sort of getting a bit distraught, thinking they're going to lose their inheritance when people downsize to do this?
Often kids have a valid interest to ensure that their inheritance is going to be looked after to
Probably
some
more
extent.
so now than ever before, because they won't get a house until the parents...
Well, yes, some of them get impatient. So that is a concern that we often have to address. Some don't have the courage to actually say that up front.
To ask the question.
Yeah, but we actually are very happy when people bring their kids into the initial meetings and interviews to find out what it's all about, because they get to ask those questions, and sometimes we answer a question even when it's not asked.
So in the model that we're talking about, the leasing the land and owning the house, what does happen in the event of either shuffling off this mortal coil or deciding to go into perhaps a nursing home?
Yeah, so in the model that we have, the home is just sold on the open market. It's either sold privately or through
so this
an
is like
land
through a
agent.
land agent that would normally sell a house?
And the either the owner or the heirs, they receive the entire 100% of the proceeds.
Right.
So the village doesn't take any deferred management fee or any exit fee or any recapitalisation fee, and all these weird and wonderful fees that have been concocted.
But of course, during the time you're living there, you'd be paying some sort of maintenance fees.
Yes, you're paying usually a fortnightly site fee, which gives you access to all facilities and use of the property.
Right.
Yeah.
So we'll be back to ask more questions in just a tick. Welcome back to Our Time. We're talking to Martin, who is from the Pandora Lifestyle Village, and we're just sort of trying to understand what happens to people when they decide to downsize their home. Now, you've won some awards, Martin.
Yes, just recently I was awarded life membership of SA Parks, which is the Caravan Parks Association of South Australia.
Who knew that existed?
Well, exactly.
And you are the president.
I am, yes.
So how did all that come about?
Well,
were you jumping around in a caravan when you were a little boy with your mum and dad, trucking around Australia, and you got used to all the caravan parks?
No. Look, I'm a little bit of an oddity in this organisation.
Don't admit to anything being odd.
Because our model of the residential village grew out of the caravan park model, which is based upon people owning their own caravan.
Oh, of course.
And moving around, either paying an overnight fee or staying longer.
Right, well that makes perfect sense.
Yes, our model's long ago left behind that heritage, and like you wouldn't recognise it today. But I've kept the association with that organisation, and have been involved for well over 30 years, and was awarded life membership a couple of weeks back for services.
That's wonderful.
Yeah, thank you.
See, we don't always know these things because they're not necessarily on our radar. But this is one of the things, and one of the reasons I really wanted to talk with you, because all of us are going to get older at one stage, of course, not me, of course, but It's a difficult decision as to know what to do. I'm not sick enough to need a nursing home, but I'm just really over looking after a house and garden and all of those things, and I'm a bit lonely, and I'm thinking, what do I do next? The wife and I usually, I guess.
Well, about half of the homes in our villages are occupied by couples, and the other half, actually slightly more than that, are occupied by singles. But the number of couples and single female households is pretty similar. So these
do they get to meet each other?
Oh, absolutely. We've had multiple marriages and couplings, dozens. Lost track years and years ago of how many.
Well, if there's no other incentive, there's one.
There's one for sure. Yeah.
I never really considered that, but I guess that's a very serious option.
That's taking loneliness, an antidote for loneliness to another level, I guess.
It actually is.
But look, most commonly people come into our villages and say, I wish I'd have done this sooner. And
yes, I've actually heard that said.
Yeah, and that's because of this sort of, the boiling frog syndrome. They gradually think, well, my health's not quite what it was, the house is getting a bit too big, finances are getting tight, I don't know that I trust tradesmen anymore, I don't know how to, make these changes.
Well, that's a valid point. So if something happens with your house, do you have to find your own tradesman, or have you got people on site?
Well, we have multiple tradesmen who've been sort of tried and tested.
You recommend?
And the rumour mill is extraordinary. So someone comes in
that's
and does the wrong thing.
Well, that's the community, isn't it?
Absolutely.
Yes.
The word soon gets out. Don't use that guy, kind of thing.
So what happens if the grandchildren come to stay?
They're welcome to come and stay. Most people, it's never really a problem to the village because most people are happy to see their grandkids and then hand them back. So we don't have overstaying
And you just become a
grandchildren.
grandfather. I'm sure you don't want to hand this one back.
No. Just last week I became a grandfather for the first time. Yep, very big event.
Congratulations, because you had so much to do with it.
Exactly.
I say that to people. I'm so proud. I'm a grandparent. And what did you have to do with that?
Nothing. A bit of genetics a long time ago. Yeah. But we definitely find...
So what you're saying, though, is that the joy of being a human isn't cramped by moving, downsizing, because still you can live your life the way you did before, just in another place.
That's right. And look, sometimes we've had... families have had, some difficult times within the family, and so there's been a need for a family member to come and stay with grandma and grandpa, in a transitional sense. So we don't kind of exclude that either. But it usually has its own natural time limit. But we try and let people live as normal a life as possible with added benefits, rather than imposing a lot of restrictions just to be in an over 50s village, because
I know several people who've done exactly this and have the caravan parked in the garage and go off for a couple of months, and they seem to be very happy. Yeah. But I've also noticed that there are people who have stopped working actively, in whatever profession they started off in.
Yeah.
And do you think this is the answer for people who sort of, I've worked all my life, I just don't want to work anymore, I just want to have fun. This is an easy way out, do you think?
Look, it is for some. And the main drivers of people going into any village are a change of employment, so retirement, a change of health, a change of relationship. Unfortunately, older relationships sometimes change status, or they lose a partner, and they're big incentives for people to make a change.
See, I guess, speaking from a male perspective, the things that I would miss, I suppose, if I moved out of the area that I had lived in for a long time. Yeah. Although having said that, I don't know all that many people in my street because it keeps changing all the time.
Yeah.
But it's things like, I suppose, men's shed.
Yes.
Are there men's sheds available, for example? Or I'm not sure what women do.
Well, they don't call it a men's shed anymore. Because of...
Person shed?
Yeah, something. Community shed.
A community shed,
but it is dominantly
it's
male.
just I've talked to people from men's sheds on this program.
Yes.
And they have actually made that point that girls can come now too.
Yeah, but there is a big need for men to socialise. And there's a lot of men
they're often the forgotten ones because they've socialised, sort of, all their life at work.
That's right.
And then it stopped.
And with their social life, they've left to their wives usually to organise.
Yes.
And so some feel
What do I do
pretty
now?
lost and purposeless, when they get to retirement.
What about gay couples? Are they welcomed into a community like this?
They are. We've only had a few inquiries, like less than a handful over the years. And it's like anything, when you've got one very dominant group, so in our case it's very much heterosexual white people. We have a few Asian, but not that many. It's always harder for the first new of any sort to come into that group.
Well, I asked that question because it also applies to perhaps people from other countries.
Yes.
Because they may not speak English all that well.
We've had that issue.
Yep.
Yeah.
But the other thing is the next progression past the point of being in this sort of accommodation is they need to go into a nursing home, because very few nursing homes cater for couples to be together.
Yes. Look, that's a big transition for anybody and for any family to manage.
I mean, the reality in life is we're all going to move into that direction sometime.
That's right.
That we may or may not need that sort of assistance.
That's right. But look, no one ever goes through life with the ambition to go into a nursing home. It's no one's goal.
Oh, really?
That's right.
So we hear this lay back and someone could bring me food 5 times a day. No?
Well, I've met very few that say that.
No, I'm not thinking that either.
We have actually met a few, but most don't. So it's a very tough transition, and it's tough for families to manage it as well.
So in your style of, what would you call it? Is it lifestyle village?
Yeah, that's good.
Yeah, okay. Yeah. In your style of lifestyle village, you don't have a connection, you can't move out of that into a nursing home that's next door.
We don't have a direct connection because it's family that manage that transition.
Right.
We as village operators cannot manage that transition.
No, and that's really an important thing to understand as well, that we all need to make a will at some point, and I guess we need to let family members know what our desires are.
It's very important.
When is the time, do you think, to talk about that? Is it when you start, like the frog in the hot pond?
Definitely the sooner the better. I mean, we've had people move in that have had strokes in their 50s, and they come face to face with their mortality way earlier than they expected. And just as an example, or a major cancer diagnosis. So that compels, if that happens to someone, they're catapulted into a whole bunch of decisions, and they've got to involve their family. And of course, families have their own lives.
Yes,
and
of course.
Are busy. So
the whole purpose of having a family is so that they can move on.
That's right. So we try and provide a facility where people can live active lives, independent, active lives, socially engaged, but we can't take away from the family's engagement with that part of their life as well.
No, I understand completely.
Yeah.
So really the decision here is, okay, I've come to retirement age, I'm quite healthy now, I'm thinking I'm going to downsize, the family are all in agreement, let's all do it, let's move to a nice place with a little garden out the back, I can still pot it with my plants, or I can still sort of do my crafty things or whatever it is.
Yeah.
I can still go out and socialise with other people in the village.
Yep.
I've got that village mentality. I can either be by myself or I can, engage with everybody in whatever way. But at the end of the day, I need to discuss with my family what will happen if I got sick.
That's right. They should have a plan at a personal level, and of course at the level of an estate as well. Yeah.
I get it. Yeah. And we'll be back to talk to Martin a little bit more in just a tick. We've been talking about what happens when we need to downsize from our regular home, maybe into a lifestyle village with Martin. Martin, the one thing we haven't talked about is cost. Is it horrendously expensive to downsize? Do I have to sell the house and the one next door that I don't own to do it?
No. Most people free up a lot of funds when they do downsize and move into a village. So to move into ours, you're paying anything from around $100,000 for an older established home.
Is that one bedroom or two?
No, that'd usually be two.
2 bedrooms, right.
And then our new homes are in the sort of high 200s, low 300s now, and that's for a 2-bedroom, 1.5 bathroom.
What do you do in half a bathroom?
Well, it's a real estate.
You don't have to answer.
It's a real estate euphemism for a second toilet.
It's ridiculous, isn't it?
And
I
vanity.
get very frustrated because people say, I want to go to the bathroom. What happened to the toilet?
That's right. No, you got the toilet, no shower in the half.
Unless you put your feet in. So are a lot of people banging down the door to move into these places?
We got a waiting list of nearly 20 people who want to move into our next development. We haven't even got
as soon as somebody leaves. Oh, you're developing more.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And anecdotally, what are people saying? Is this the best thing I ever did? Or?
Look, it's a very common remark that people make. Wish I had have done it sooner. I've got more friends than I've had in the last 20 years. And we definitely see that in some health outcomes as well, where people have
I can imagine.
Recuperate from serious or semi-serious illnesses, or where they've felt that life's at a turning point and they may not come back from their health.
We're human animals and we need companionship.
Absolutely.
Just like we've spent the last half hour talking, Martin.
That's right.
Thank you so much. I hope that's been of help to you to understand what is out there for you if you decide to downsize in your home. Until next time on Our Time, thanks Martin, and we'll see you soon. Keep yourself nice till then. Bye.
Thanks, Malcolm. Bye.